You know, without that moving chair, we could have a sofa in here.
Alright, ridiculous tropes in sci-fi. Number 2, I'm starting with the small ones, working my way up. So, this one is one that I've seen pop up a few times. And it's one of those ones that, on the face of it, looks really, really cool. But then you start to think about it, you think, maybe this is silly. So, imagine the scene, you're in some kind of futuristic world. There's some futuristic spaceship and you're the pilot. And what you want is to be able to get into the pilot's seat really quickly. So you're sort of in some central part of the spacecraft and you jump into a seat that's there and you press a button and the seat goes zoop and puts you in the pilot's position on the spacecraft. And it's super cool. It goes back to the old sort of Thunderbirds launch sequence where you've got, I don't know, a sofa in your lounge and it retracts into the floor and it translates you and it puts you in the vehicle. And there's a big problem with this. And you can tell that none of the people who wrote the script or who did the set design on something like this, I mean, to be fair, it appears usually in things like video games. But even then, none of the people creating the assets for this world had to stop and think about actual spatial layout, because imagine you've got a fairly large item on your space fighter or whatever, which is the pilot on the pilot's seat. I mean, you think about that in context, it's actually quite a large object. But then, far from just having to accommodate this large object, what you want to do next is you want to translate it through the center of your spacecraft. And as anybody who knows anything about spatial layout will understand, if you have an object or a 2D profile and then you move it, that sweeps out a large volume. So what you have is a situation where you can't use that space now for anything else, because that space through the center of your spacecraft, a huge volume, has the sole purpose of being the space through which the pilot's seat moves as it moves the pilot into the pilot's position. And it's bad enough when it's the pilot. The worst example of it I've seen, I think, is in the movie Tron Legacy, where, yeah, it's really cool. The main character, they say, oh, you need to go and take the gunner position on the back. So he's in the cockpit on the front of this sort of space fighter thing, and his seat whizzes round and zooms all the way to the back of this sort of fighter ship, which means that, yes, okay, it's a computer game type world, but whatever. The entire volume of the inside of this bomber doesn't contain any bombs, doesn't contain any systems, doesn't contain anything. It's entirely set aside as this is the space that the pilot's seat moves through, or the gunner's seat moves through. That's all it does. But there are other examples of this trope coming up, and it's a trope. It's one of those things that people use, but you'd never do it in reality. If you had a small combat spaceship, it's bad enough having to accommodate the pilot's seat just as a static thing. If you make the ship bigger so that the seat can move through the middle of it, you're making the ship bigger, you're making it heavier, you're making the pressure vessel larger, so it's more likely if the enemy's blasting away at you with, I don't know, railguns or something. I always say railguns. I don't know, space machine guns, whatever. Laser bolts. It's a much bigger pressure vessel that they might get a hole in. And it's much more likely that you would have, I know, a narrow crawl space or walk space or something. And you can use that space for, I don't know, life support, electronic systems, whatever you would normally have. You could even, I don't know, have a living space. You could have a lounge, you could have a sofa, you could make use of that space for something useful. So there you go. It's a small trope. It's very windy. It's a small trope, but it's just one of those ones that really needs a little bit more thought.